Good evening, sir. It's good to see
Good
you.
evening.
I'm looking forward to also seeing you at the Miami Book Fair. Do you have
Mhm.
your reading schedule?
Yes, I believe it's Sunday. Forget the date. It's a Sunday of the book fair at 12:30
Okay,
p.m.
great.
Yep. Middle of the day.
The
Uh,
nice thing about the book fair is they do a lot of the poetry readings in the same room. So I can
mm-hmm.
just get there at 10 and sit there all day and have poets come to the home.
Right. You don't have to move from room to room. Right.
Right, right. The last time we interviewed you was for your selected. Um,
Yes.
Tell us about the new book.
Well, the new book is really just a movement further inland, in a manner of speaking, from what I've used to. I've always lived in cities on the coast, with the one exception being Las Vegas, where I lived for 3 years, and been highly influenced by, of course, the sea and whatever the sea brings and whatever the sea takes away. This time, having lived, as we spoke before, having lived in Vermont and spent time there, the landscape has changed, and a lot of it relates to the beautiful state of Vermont, a place that I never thought I would like, because I've always lived in cities. I grew up, I was born in a city, I grew up in a city, and found myself really surprised by how much the landscape of Vermont, the greenery of Vermont, and the actual changes in weather in Vermont, which can be quite extreme, influence my work, not just in terms of the imagery, but the thematics. Some of the things that I started becoming interested in, becoming aware of, and attempting to make some sense, personally and emotionally, of what I was experiencing. So you'll see in the book a lot of imagery related to that, but beyond that, a lot of encounters with what it is that gives this imagery meaning. And I was not, I was a little bit surprised by that, frankly.
Um, Perhaps you could read us something that gives us a taste of that.
Sure. Why don't I read a poem that sort of encapsulates much of that. Uh, and this is called New Pastures. Spring snow falling. I am walking by the river to dispense with city air, stuck to my clothes, trapped in my hair. Some vague need to embrace whatever love has left in me. Spring snow falling, and the field on the far shore glows like the blue sheets on which you wrote of moves to new pastures. On that field, birds now, or the memory of birds, black and scattered. I think I should run back to where I found you, an island that insists, as if insistence were the mirror of existence, that water rises every spring as the snow melts me closer to our days together.
That's wonderful.
You never know, when you're writing poems, as I'm sure you're aware, you never know what comes out and how it will come out, and where the poem ends or how it ends. And in this case, that was the case. One of the things I love about poetry is how it surprises me. If there were no surprise, if everything was etched in stone ahead of time, or etched in my brain ahead of time, I don't think I would be that interested in it. But I've been interested in it since I was 18. So it's almost 60 years. And I come to it as I get older with a renewed sense of discovery. And that's very exciting.
I have difficulty understanding the idea of the United States, and I'm wondering how you're doing understanding the idea of the United States.
Oh gosh, you know, do nations exist? Really is a question. Are they nations or are they notions? And the beginning of understanding of what a nation is, whether it's Ireland, whether it's the United States, or whether it's Cuba, is by seeing it as a notion, an idea in people's minds. And only then can you tap into that vast reservoir of mysteries that a nation is made of. I think the United States is full of mystery, full of sometimes baffling ways that people look at it, people engage with it, and people celebrate it as well as criticize it. So it's like a merry-go-round in many ways, a merry-go-round of ideas and beliefs, many of which are contradictory. How can there be in the same country a person like Bernie Sanders and a person like Donald Trump? They seem so opposite, so distinctly at odds with each other it baffles me. And yet at the same time, they're both part of this country. I wish some elements would be less combative, but my wish is only a small drop of water in a huge ocean.
Did any of those thoughts make it into this particular book?
Not directly. I mean, I think the whole issue underlies my writing, the attempt to understand this country, the attempt to understand my place in this country, as an immigrant, as a Cuban, as an immigrant, as a person who is forever trying to scratch beyond the surface. And as I told you before, I lived in Las Vegas for 3 years, and boy, did I do a lot of scratching of the surface there and could find nothing but surface. In many ways, that city, at least when I got there, I don't think it's changed that much, was a very weird, convoluted vision of the American ethos, of the American way. So in that sense, I found it interesting. But again, there are no roots there. And as the cultural critic Dave Hickey, who was my colleague at the university there, once said, nobody's parents are from Vegas. And that tells you a lot. So the way that there's a whole kind of ecological thrust in the book as well. When encountering nature as undiluted as you can find on the East Coast in Vermont, you begin to wonder, well, what's the essence of nature? How do I fit in? How do I? And what I wound up discovering is that that's the wrong approach. One is part of nature, and it's only a matter of allowing yourself not necessarily to influence nature, but to be influenced by nature, to become. This sounds like a cliche, but to become one with nature, and that was a very, very good and healthy discovery for me. In my life in Vermont. Of course, as I said before, I split my time between Cambridge and Vermont, but it is Vermont more than Cambridge right now, where I seek my inspiration and discover ways of writing poems that I wasn't aware of before, that I had not practiced before. It's hard to describe what these poems contain, to be honest. And the only way I can do it is by reading the poems themselves. If I may, I'll read one, which also includes South Florida.
Yes, please do. Please do.
It's I originally titled this Climate Change Canticle, but I thought that was too direct, and I gave it a Spanish a poem a title in Spanish, La Caña de Pescar Poemas, which means the pole for fishing poetry. It's a very awkward translation. The sea means much in my poems. So do rivers and the ripples caused by fish swimming against the current. Here in Vermont, the first snow has come, and the birds have already flown south. Not long ago, the skies of the Everglades darkened with flocks, and I saw on electric lines hundreds of kingfishers as I drove the Tamiami Trail. Last winter, I counted 5, which has nothing to do with poetry and a lot to do with climate change. Daily now, I fish facing bare trees and sharp wind. 1 or 2 poems might come, or ideas for poems, or nothing at all. Then I pack up my pole to try another spot and think I'll write prose, which is like trying to land the big redeeming whale. Soon the sun won't be so weak, and the birds that survive will be around all year. Snow, a primal memory, and the Everglades, a watery dream, I'll write about instead of fish.
Beautiful. I remember living in the Berkshires.
Very close to Vermont, yeah.
Right. I remember that feeling of it was just a charmed existence.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it was in Sandy Hook. And so
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's amazing how an event can travel backwards in time and color that experience.
Right, right.
Does Vermont feel like a safe place, or is it a place with its own dangers?
No, Vermont is I think there's an image of Vermont as this idyllic place where everybody's walking around smelling flowers and so on, but no, there are tensions there. There are tensions that have to do with the fact that it's a poor state, essentially. Few industries and few jobs for people. It is not as liberal as people usually think of Vermont. They say it's a blue state, and it is, but there's still a lot of resentment about people who feel like they were left behind. And were kind of pushed aside by new waves of people who moved into Vermont beginning with the 60s and through the 70s. So there are those issues there, but the main danger in Vermont right now is being mauled by a bear, frankly. There are quite a few of them. I'm just joking. Bears are, for the most part, harmless. As if you lived in the Berkshires, you probably know this. They're retiring, and they don't really bother you unless you bother them or threaten their cubs. Still, I think there are those inherent stresses and tensions there that have kind of consumed this country. Consumed this country for the last Well, at least since 2016, but I think they were there before.
Let's talk about the title. How did you choose the title of the book?
Well, let's start with the photograph of the title. I had the title "Sea of Broken Mirrors," which is a line from "The Sea is Filled with Broken Mirrors," a line from one of the poems toward the end of the book. And I just couldn't find a proper image for that title. I just didn't know how to deal with it, and there were representative paintings and so on. People would bring to me and so on. I was very unsatisfied. One weekend, my wife and I were in New York City, and we decided to do one of the few free things in the city, which is to take the Staten Island ferry from Manhattan to Staten Island and back, and it's free. So we did that, and some beautiful days as we were crossing the bay. My wife took out her camera, her phone actually, and took a picture of the water. And then she showed it to me, and I said, "That's it. That's the cover. Sea of Broken Mirrors," because that's the image I had in my head with that line. And so that's where the title and the cover image came about.
That's incredible. That's just.
But isn't it that just the accidental nature of all these things in itself has such power and can be so satisfying. That moment of discovery is what drives me.
And you did one of the things that's most difficult for poets. We are able to describe the light on the water. And that's one of the most difficult things for poets to do in a different way.
Yes, yeah. And that was the image that came closest to what I had in mind. And it actually, I think it works very well.
I do
So
too. Yeah,
I have my wife to thank for it. All right.
Excellent.
Yeah.
We have time for another poem if you'd like to read one more.
Sure. Oh God, I was going to I was going to read a political poem, but I won't.
You read whatever you'd like. We can make time for two poems if you've got a political poem.
All right, let's do the political poem. It's called "The Crab Smell of Winter Beaches." The crab smell of winter beaches. You know, the beaches here are very different from the beaches in Florida, especially in the winter. They're cold, they're barren, they're gray, and often not the most pleasant places to be. The crab smell of winter beaches is like a politician's breath who's been campaigning for months without a toothbrush. He's left behind his wife, his startled son, his livid lovers who thought they were the one. The politician has golden hands, blue minnow eyes, a voice that grates like the broken hinges of January. The haze of his pronouncements turns the water gray as spoiled milk. He now, chest out thrust, speaks to legions who are his mirror. Man, woman, child, a seagull squawking in the wind, his own monument, his own neon sign advertisement. That's the political poem I was talking about. It casts no stones or many stones. But I refuse to say anything else about it.
Very good. Let the poetry speak. Exactly.
Let the poetry speak for itself. Yes. Right.
What poem would you like to close on?
Okay, I'll close with this one.
Okay.
Because it also makes reference to the sea left behind, so to speak. The gift. I'm a child of the sea, but I've always lived by rivers. They're never the same. When the moon is full, I stop and wonder. When winter comes, I crawl in my cave. I used to love the city, its buildings and clamor. Now, I'd rather walk in the woods and bathe in the breath of trees. The watch on my wrist reminds me I will end where I began. Time is a gift unearned. I have a dog named Diego who hates when I leave the house, afraid I'll never return. There is no comforting him. Just now, he shook off a thought he didn't like. You learned that trick from me. My wife sings in the morning and tries to get me to dance. Last winter, we ran naked through the falling snow. I feel blessed there are things I know, and many more I don't. My dearest friends live far away. I long for them as I long for comfortable clothes. My son has become a man. He looks like my father and acts like me sometimes. Day will come when sleep is a seed, and the seed will grow in ways I do not understand.